Good morning, my dear friends. I'm Rehan Mukherjee. I'm going to eating my breakfast cornflakes and nature, and I'm going to doing my study. Okay, I will show you my breakfast. Look, my dear friends, this is my breakfast cornflakes. I am eating cornflakes daily. Look, my dear friends, this is my outside nature. Look, my dear friends, this is my God room. Look, my dear friends, this is my very first contest. I will meet after eating. Okay, my dear friends. Look, my dear friends, I'm Rehan Mukherjee. I'm complete my breakfast cornflakes, and I'm going to doing my study. I will meet after doing my study. Okay, my dear friends, I will show you my reading chapters and writing handwriting. Okay. Look, my dear friends, this is my study. I am going to ready for my exam. I am doing my exam reading. Look, this is my exams question. Look, this is my exams question answer. Look, I am done my study. I am ready for my exam, and I am going to do my exam study. Look, I have done my exam study. Okay, my dear friends, I will meet. I will show you my ship puja. Look, this is no rain weather. Look, very no rain weather. I am going to taking bath and ship puja. Okay.
ফুলগুলো সব তুলে তুলে এ হাতে ধরো ওটা ফুলগুলো তুলে তুলে বন্ধ সব পুরোটা তুলি হাতে থাকো
Good afternoon, my dear friends. I am Rehan Mukherjee. I am complete my yoga. Sorry, I am complete my Shiv Puja. Look, I am done. And look, this is my lunch. Look, I will show you some nature. Look, this is my afternoon nature. Look, this is my God room. Look. Look, this is my lunch I am eating. my lunch. I will make after eating. Okay, my dear friends. I will show you. Okay. Okay. Look, my dear friends, I am complete my study. Sorry, I am complete my lunch, and I am going to taking some rest. I will meet in my study with my teacher. I will show you my study with my teacher. I will show you my reading and writing with my teacher. Okay, my dear friends. Look, my dear friends, I am Rehan Mukherjee. I am seeing some nature of my garden. Look, this is my garden. And look, this is my house. I am going to doing my study. I am going to doing my study with my teacher. Look, this is my outside nature. Look, this is my garden. Okay, my dear friends, I will meet after doing my study. Look, this is this. It was close. Look, I am going to doing my study with my teacher. Okay, my dear friends, I will show you my teacher. Look, this is my outside nature. Look, I am going to measure mine. Look, this is my teacher. Look, this is my study, and I will meet after doing my study. Okay. Look, and look, this is my outside nature. Look. Look, this is my outside nature. And look, this is my study, and I am going to doing my study. Okay, my dear friends, I will meet after doing my study. I will show you my reading chapters and writing handwriting after doing. Okay. Look, my dear friends, I am complete my study. Look, this is my reading. 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 Look. Look, this is my reading. Okay, my dear friends. Look, this is my writing. Look, this is my writing. Okay, my dear friends. Look, my dear friends, I'm complete my study. My teacher is going his house, and I am going to taking some rest. I will meet in my Bengali study and yoga live class. I will show you my Bengali study. Good evening, my dear friends. I am Rehan Mukherjee. I am going to doing my Bengali study. Look, this is my Bengali study. I am going to doing. Look, this is my study. Look, this is my outside nester. Look. Look, my dear friends, this is my Bengali study, and I will meet after doing my Bengali study. I will show you my Bengali writing and hearing reading. Okay? Okay. Look, my dear friends, I am complete my Bengali and Hindi. Look, I am writing Gori, Sunere Bal, Gori Larki, and look, this is Rakam Ram Lal, Kishan Lal, Vishan Lal.
With Bishan Lal.
Now, look, my dear friends, this is my reading. Okay, my dear friends, look, this is my setting. Bhaka Bhatu Talbusa 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 Hasho Koba Kujub Kotakot. Look, this is my writing. Look, this is my reading. Takata se tita digotita sututa digotuta ditita cateta vedeta catata auto. Da kadada se dida digodita sututa digotuta ditita cateta. Okay, my dear friends, I will meet after doing my yoga class. I will show you my yoga class. Look, my dear friends, I am complete my yoga class and I am going to eating my dinner. I will show you my dinner. Okay, okay. I will show you. Look, my dear friends, I am in my room. I am going to eating my dinner. Look. Look at this. Look, my dear friends, I'm complete my nature and I'm going to eating. Look, this is my dinner. I'm eating roti chicken. Okay, my dear friends, I will meet tomorrow. Okay, good night. Tata. Bye bye. Okay.